Recon, just 2663, new incident. Yeah, we're out on Boles Creek here in Weed and appears to be a vegetation fire by the railroad tracks.
Fire crews from all over the state and media from all over the country are in Northern California right now for the Boles Fire. 375 acres burned, 1,000 firefighters, equal to half the population of the entire town, trying to control the flames there. More than 150 structures are damaged or destroyed, and hundreds don't know yet if their homes survived.
One of my engineers, Engineer Gaddard on engine 2663, spotted the fire, so he was the reporting party. He turned in the fire that there was a small smoke in Boles Creek, and he was investigating. I was on Main Street when I heard that on the radio, so just about 30 seconds here from the fire. When I arrived at scene, I pulled up right about here, and the fire had started just off to our south across the railroad tracks there in the Boles Creek area, in the area of the creek there. And it was spotting down the railroad tracks on both sides. And probably within the first 30 seconds, these trees behind me started torching directly behind me. And this house just to the north right here started catching on fire. And it was running up Schoolhouse. This hill behind us is called Schoolhouse Hill. And the fire was spotting ahead of itself and torching and running up the hill behind us. Weed PD was at scene. They'd gotten here prior to us. Officer Steve Shannon was here, so I told him that he needed to bump around and start evacuations of the hillside area and work north from there, because it was evident it was going to hit the community behind Schoolhouse rather quickly. So it was going to run up over the top of this hill and down the other side pretty fast.
All units dispatched to the vegetation fire, battalion 2613, Boles IC. Command is Command 10, TAC 2.
So that fire started in this general area in here. I don't know exactly where. It was just, when I got here, the main column was coming up from in here, and then it was spotting down the tracks. So you can get a good view of that. It was spotting down both sides of this tracks. It started torching those trees, and then it was starting to make a hard push up Schoolhouse Hill.
My first actual thought was try to make a save and try to save my own house. And once I thought about it for a second, and my priority was life, and that's when I grabbed my dog. I ran to the neighbor's house and grabbed their dogs. I knew that most of the people were at work at that time. I kind of knew that the houses that weren't, that the people would be home all day long. And I glanced at their house, no cars in the parking lot. And then it was belongings, and so I grabbed a few belongings, what I could. By the time I got to that stage, the whole back of my house was on fire, and so there was no trying to make a stop in that house and committing resources to that. So I just grabbed a few belongings, what I could, made it to the end of the street where I know there's two elderly neighbors down there. There's two elderly, one 98 and the other one close to that age, and made sure that they were out. Just one house was already involved and the other house wasn't involved yet. And I went through that house, yelled into the other house, and so life was the biggest priority there. Grabbed Chief Quigley's dog, and then just kind of left it for the crews that were up here. There was without a resource, without equipment, there was nothing that I could really do as far as fire suppression.
So this is the north side of Schoolhouse Hill. When we were looking down there at the origin where the fire started, this would be the north side of that same hill. So the fire, when it started, was running up hillside, and then it turned and it made a sustained downhill crown run down towards Hillside Drive. So really this is where it started impacting the community of Weed, was off this sustained crown run. So it basically hit dead on between the high school and the elementary school and those houses that are in between here on the north side of the road. So when these trees went off, we were getting spot fires 1.5 miles ahead of the fire from this material that was being wind driven and deposited throughout the community. At that point it was in direct line with 3 major residential communities within the city limits. So those spot fires then were being deposited in all the yards of all those residents that were within that wind column and the smoke column.
Engine 2660, Boles IC, I need you to go to Weed High School. Weed High School, 2660, copy.
Wiring, engine 3110 out scene, Weed High School.
And the edge of the fire clipped the elementary school right here and caught the school on fire within the first 15 minutes. And we had a major attic fire in here, but I needed to get the elementary school out, so I assigned engines to it. And the first strike team that arrived from our neighboring unit, Shasta, the Shasta unit, I assigned that strike team to the school, so we were able to get 5 engines in on it, and they were able to get the school out. So there was just spot fires throughout the elementary school. Well, basically there's about 300 kids that go to school here, 250, 300. And then they initially were going to evacuate in place, but because it was hit dead on, they evacuated to the high school. And then from the high school, we brought them out. They brought them out to the Big Spring School, which is about 20 miles north of here. They used South Davis, which, lucky they evacuated quickly because South Davis got impacted on the fire and they just made it through. But they definitely had a fire coming at them as they were evacuating.
Yeah, I've seen, made contact with school employees. School has evacuated the students to the baseball field. Negative fire at the school. We're going to go ahead and proceed to the fire.
When I arrived, I came up the street, and there were numerous spot fires along this back hillside right here. The fire was crowning out across the over here to the south where you're looking, and this whole street is kind of lined up in this direction, so the whole street's lined up perfectly with that fire. The winds were about sustained 20-mile-an-hour winds, gusts to 40 as I was pulling up here. You couldn't see from 3 houses down to the end of the street here, but as I was pulling up, the whole back hillside had spot fires, numerous spot fires, and it was dropping embers into this vacant lot. This is a vacant lot here where we're standing. The structure was actually over here where it's cleared dirt, and there was a structure here, and the fire hadn't reached this structure yet. It just had dropped spot fires into this side. I made it to the end of the street, and by the time I made it to the end of the street to see what the fire was doing, that house had already been about a quarter involved. That was the first house on this street to become involved, and it kind of pushed that direction as the wind was going to the north. It backed around this hillside here and made a push down that side of the street, and it took out, it's completely lined up with the wind at that time, and it took out every single home down this way. There was 1 engine involved here. Captain Darren Dow was the one assigned to this, and he ended up making it to the end of the street and held it for a good couple hours right there where we pulled in on Woodridge Way. In between the water tank and Woodridge Way, he held it there for probably a good hour until I made it to the end of the block and saw it had came around the back side of him. And that's when he did a hose lay down the middle of the street to the other side of Chief Quigley's house. And there's about 5 houses still standing in there because of that.
I went and proceeded down to our dispatch center, which we call the Emergency Command Center. And by the time I got there, it was evident that I needed to go to Weed and tie in with Chief Quigley, who was the IC at the time. I came to Boles Creek, where the origin of the fire was and where Chief Quigley has basically set up the incident command post. I tied in with Darren here at the incident command post, and that's when he informed me that, hey, it's run through the homes. We've got it's starting to affect the schools. We've got evacuations in progress. He made good arrangements to get the people out, and that there was some impingement on the mill as well. He also informed me that we also needed to call back one of our battalion chiefs who accepted assignment on a fire, on the King Fire, out of county, and we needed to get him back because his house had been destroyed. And it took a brief second, and then he told me, and mine's gone too. It was one of those occasions where you're looking at somebody in eye to eye and they're telling you that their home is gone, but they're communicating with you, they're telling you that they understand the big picture, because he was having to make sure that the community as a whole was protected. He knew that his loss had already happened. He knew that his fellow battalion chief Tavalero and one of our captains, Quigley, and one of our firefighters' homes were already gone, but they had to stay engaged. And to do that was to keep focused, keep professional, looking at what the best tactics were to be able to mitigate any more damage.
When this section of timber went off, probably about an hour later, that's what we had another run around White Avenue to what would be the west, the hillside here, and we had it impacted some more houses with spotting because all that stuff got deposited about a half a mile away on a section of line that we already had contained, and kind of started it all over again. So, but that probability ignition and those spot fires this year, every time one of these ponderosa pines torch, you're going to wind up with at least a dozen new fires on every single tree,
The mill was definitely giving them issues and still gave us some issues today. There's a huge chip pile in that mill, if you're familiar with it. Most of you guys are familiar with the mill there, I'm sure. It's like 3 stories tall, it's huge. All wood chips. That was on fire and is still on fire right now, but if you've driven by there or looked at the smoke, it's hardly visible now. They're tearing it apart with the bulldozer, so there's a lot of work going on.
Probably an hour into the fire, I got the McDowell engine, 2660, arrived at scene, and I deployed them, and I was able to get a Mount Shasta District volunteer engine with Jonathan Duncan and a couple firefighters, and we put them inside the mill, and basically we were inside the mill fighting fire in the veneer plant, pulled the engine straight inside. You can see that it's mostly 3-story to 4 stories tall, and the guys on the engines did an excellent job of putting out fires. There was, I don't even know, I can't even count them. I'd say 100 fires in that mill. And with the mill personnel never gave up the whole time. I think if we had lost the mill, it would have had a huge impact. They wouldn't rebuild this town, I don't think.
Taking a look at some of the resources that we had engines coming from all different directions of the county, varying levels of experience, and being able to take one of our battalion chiefs who had already realized his home was gone too, and grabbing those folks and going, come with me, we got to do something that's going to help keep the mill running and not suffer any more damage.
Much of the subdivisions in the areas of Weed near the town were in the path of the fire. That is the area of the Angel Valley subdivision. Some homes in that area have been seriously damaged. The logs and piles that were in the mill close to those homes.
And you can see, Angel Valley's right over there. That was all fire front just burning through there. And so we were just trying to pick up this left flank here. Because, if you go in there, there's entire blocks that are missing. And those houses were so well involved and pushing so hard and so fast that it just became a flanking mission. We tried to get out front and save what we could, but flanking just became the priority. There was just no stopping it.
We weren't able to hold that through the meadows, much through the meadows. We're falling back, trying to hold it at a 2-track parallel up the power line next to the interstate. I'd like to request another tack.
It was just staying mobile and moving, and the guys did a great job, It was just picking up the flank, and then we'd have to move on to pick up another piece, and then we'd have to go back and check that piece because that piece would flare up because we didn't have time to just stick people on there to get, full 100% mop up. But our major priority was not to lose what we had gained. We'd already lost so much that day that we just had to make sure that we didn't lose anything that we had already saved or stopped or picked up. That was the big thing. We worked so hard to keep what we had kept. We just wanted to keep it as long as we could. So the guys they were just burnt out and just tired, exhausted. Like I said, I don't know, it was some of the toughest firefighting I've ever seen from those guys. And I like I said, I've been doing this for 14 years, and to watch those guys fight like they fought, it was awesome. It was amazing.
The requests from the divisions were so many for engines that there was never a need for a staging area. When an engine would arrive, they immediately all went to work and got an assignment. So I had 5 divisions established probably within the first hour. And at any given time, there was probably 50 outstanding engine orders. So as each engine arrived or strike teamed the engines, I just put them immediately to work. So, because the outstanding requests were so great.
When we established the ICP, we made sure that we had representatives from the city police department as well as the sheriff's department. And in addition to that, we also had Pacific Power and Light, which is the power company for this region, as well as public health. So we had a lot of the key players that were helping us deal with evacuations, reestablishing power, setting up shelters, and being able to make sure we had good communication with all those cooperating agencies.
The next day, they even got in there. We started doing our primary searches on the structures to see if we had lost anybody in the structures. And we all prayed that nobody was in the structures at the time the fire came through. That's how it works. It's the fire moves so fast that sometimes people don't have a chance to get out of the way of the fire. We did remove one lady from her home here in Angel Valley with the SO deputies, and I think if she wouldn't have got out of her home, she wouldn't have been able to get out of her home on her own. The law enforcement guys that were out here were a great help. They helped us out a lot. They did a great job.
Well, we had been engaged for several weeks in many catastrophic wildland fires throughout Siskiyou County. And this fire, the Boles Fire, in my opinion, I'm, finishing up my 37th year in law enforcement, and I've worked in many areas of the state. And this is the most catastrophic, emergency that I've seen impact one city at one time, during my career. At one point, I actually called, Sheriff Basenko, the Shasta County Sheriff, who's a regional law enforcement mutual aid coordinator, and we actually had law enforcement officers respond to weed from Shasta County, like Shasta County Sheriff's Office and Reading Police Department. And also later on, we actually, we helped, we did provide some support to Weed Police Department during the criminal investigation and how the fire may have started. And we also acquired cadaver dogs to search the burned out areas to ensure there, wasn't somebody that was killed in the fire that we didn't know about.
I was able to listen to scanner traffic and find out that the fire was within the city of Weed and that several structures had already burned, which as an emergency manager for the county, that initiated my response. I was able to make contact with my county administration, who informed me that we needed to explore opening our emergency operations center, as we had learned that the fire had burned through the city of Weed and was moving toward the incorporated area of Lake Shastina.
The people that live here are very wildland fire savvy, and unfortunately over the last few years we've had a lot of fires in and around Siskiyou County, so the public, when they hear the word to evacuate, they heed that warning, and we are very thankful to the citizens of Weed and the surrounding communities that when they did hear the evacuation notice that they did get up and they were ready to go and they left, and that was key, and it was a very big concern of ours following after we contained the fires, going back through all the homes and ensuring no one was in the homes after they burned. And it is a big thank you to the citizens of this community that they did evacuate.